I don't know.
Mhm. Take off, yeah.
Okay, hi,
Hey.
welcome. We're making introductions this time. Welcome. I'm Carmen with Nuga Honeypot, and this is Joe.
Joe Stoker with Joe B. Whisper.
Yeah, we are both beekeepers in Tennessee, and I'm in what everybody calls Eastern Tennessee, but I hear some people calling it Middle Tennessee. So if you look on a map, it looks pretty east to me and not middle, but what would you call it? And where are you considered to be? Because just so everybody knows, Joe's about what, an hour and 15, an hour,
Yeah,
20
hour,
minutes
15
from
minutes.
me.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
North
North
and up.
and up and colder.
Yes.
So we're a little bit different as far as climate.
Hmm.
Okay. And then how would you describe where I'm at in Tennessee?
I haven't thought about it.
Yeah.
Generally, if I'm putting something in a forum, I'll put mid-TN mountains, because that's where I am.
Okay.
The illusion, the optical illusion that you're getting into, I think that's putting you in East Tennessee is the fact that you're close to the border, you're close to the eastern border.
Hmm.
If let me do it, just
Tennessee.
Cleveland, and then you're going to be in North Carolina pretty
And I'm
quick.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm there, so it's like,
And
I got
you're
to
like
go.
up.
Yeah, I don't think that much about it. It's just
Well, a lot of
middle of
people
the
talk
country.
about it. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, like just barely south. You
Okay.
know,
Okay.
if I was strapping, I think about the way the sun comes up and the way the latitudes are, and we're south of the middle,
Okay.
so
So
that's
we're
close enough.
south of the middle, which sounds
Yeah,
about
of
like
the U.S.
where I'm at with about everything in life. Okay.
There you
South
go.
of the middle, just a little bit off. Okay. So that's where we're at, just so everybody knows. And we thought we would discuss a little bit about what we're seeing now in our hives and um, then the last half, which is going to be about 30 minutes. The last half, we'll just talk about what to look for, what we get excited about when we see in the spring,
Hmm.
because that's going to be here before we know it. So
Oh yeah,
just
yeah.
like so fast. Oh my God, it's January. It's 2024. Just where did 2023 go? People are talking about how bad their 2023 was. I'm just like, it went so fast. I don't even remember. So I guess that's good. I don't know. Maybe I need
Ours
to be
was
more mindful.
No, mine was insanely busy, and I can look back at three
Me
months
too.
ago at an email or something I sent, and historically, I'm thinking that was at least 2 years ago, wasn't it? I mean, for real,
And it
because it was
feels
just
like it.
nonstop. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, same for me. I did way more removals this year.
Mm,
And so what I realized is really beekeeping, if you're just a beekeeper and you have one or two hives in your backyard, cool. You're still paying attention to the seasons, you know what's
mm,
happening,
mm,
and you do that without realizing you need to. You're just like, oh, they're bringing in pollen. What's blooming now? You just kind of
mm,
become attentive to what's in the world. But when you start doing removals, you're like, oh, spring is over. Everyone has swarmed, and now they live in people's houses, and now it's the summer, and I'm removing them. So
mm.
it's really interesting to live that because and I've got, just so everybody knows, maybe we can just give them an idea of what our hive, how many hives we have. I think I've got about 27 hives. And I say I think because
Yeah, once
like
it
I
gets
could,
over about 15, and especially over
yeah,
20,
it's 20
doesn't
something.
matter anymore. It's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's too many.
Uh,
It's too many.
it's not. It's still the fun zone, which you'll hear
Hmm.
us laugh about because Joe told me anything over 15, you're no longer in the fun zone. So I want to make a fun zone t-shirt. That's our thing. But I've got that. I've got about 9 hives at my house, and then I think I've got about 4 or 5 out yards where I have hives. So that's where I'm at. And then you want to,
I keep it down to 20 here in the winter, and or as close to 20 as I can get it. I think there's 21 here now, and probably lose a couple of them. Um,
mhm.
just I take crapshoots into the winter, so I've got a late
Yeah,
queen or something with
me
that
too.
many bees, and we talked about kind of the kinder, gentler. People say, well, if they're swarming in September, I don't want them. I'm a little swarming. I'll throw them in a box. I don't
Yeah,
care.
me too. Just to
You
see,
know,
just to see.
yeah.
I
Oh,
try.
yeah. And I'm not trying to, be this sophisticated commercial. I understand it's a completely different world. I remember one of the guys one of YouTube guys talking to another, it was like Bob Inner, somebody talking about to another commercial guy. And he said, it's all about recovering the equipment. If you have a die out or, a hive that fails. And he says, it's not like, and he said in a kind way, he says, it's not like where you got a few hives in your backyard and you're naming queens, where you have an
Right.
emotional
Right.
attachment. I'm
Yeah.
very emotionally attached to bees as a whole, to all the bees out there.
All the bees.
I'm a little bit removed now from getting as involved. Like I don't have every queen named. I've got a few queens that are, more special to me than others. They're all
Hmm.
descended from the same stock, but I try to keep it 20 in the winter, and then it depends on how much I want to blow up in the spring. I can run 75 or 80 mating nukes. I've got the equipment, I've got the bees, I've got the supplies. The last couple of years, the first year I did it, I kept ramping it up, and I got to 40, 45, 55, and that kind of thing. And it was so much fun. I was where you are now, just,
That's yeah.
I'm like Macaulay Culkin running through the house.
Yeah.
And the
I just
next year
watched
I'm
that
like,
like 3 times last month, so I know
oh,
exactly what
yeah.
you're talking
Yeah.
about.
So then the next year I realized that, wait a second, this is working me down. And then this past the 2023, so both of the next 2 years, which is 2022, 2023, I backed it off and I got to about 25, 26, 20, 30 something. And I said, that's enough. I don't have a solid market for queens. I'm very particular about who takes the queens.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't
We're
know you, if I can't train you, I don't want your money.
we were talking
Uh,
about that
you know,
about
I can
giving.
go somewhere and make $40. I don't need your money.
Yeah, yeah, but
You've got to prove to me that you'll
right.
take care of her.
We talked about him making like an interview, giving people an interview before he sells the queen to them.
Well, the thing is, to finish answering that question, in the summertime, I can have, uh, I'll produce maybe 40 nukes, 30, 40 nukes. And it's kind of hard to say at any given time, like you said, when it gets up in the 50, 60, 70 laying queens on the place or something, and people are coming to getting nukes and people are coming to getting queens. So it's so,
Yeah,
widely
yeah.
variable.
Hmm.
But yeah, most people that call me up, they're freaked out and they need a queen or they think they need a queen. I ask them 4 or 5 questions, and then I tell them they need to wait.
Interview.
Yeah, I tell them they need to wait 80% of the time.
Mm.
And then I spend 15, 20 minutes explaining every aspect of that in a structured way that I'm now putting on paper and on video, because it's like I say the same thing
Yeah,
to 50 or
yeah.
60 people
Oh,
every single year.
oh my gosh.
And that's good because they get trained in what to look for. Um, and again, I don't need their money, or I don't need to, that's not my primary focus for doing
Right.
bees at all. And if it is your primary focus, you up against some tough odds, uh, you know,
Yeah.
and there's nothing wrong with making money at it.
Hmm.
But so yeah, at hive count, I'd probably say 60-ish laying queens at any given time through the summer.
Okay. Yeah, and the other thing about doing removals is that you're constantly getting bees. So
Yeah, yeah.
that's the other thing I really didn't take into consideration when I just like decided to do that is I've got all sorts of different sorts of bees in my yard in my house ends up being the BER is what I call it. I
Mhm.
keep them here for a little while and I just kind of watch them and see and then move them out, see if they're healthy, see how they're doing. Anyway, we'll
Well,
have to
that's
talk
like
about removals.
Kid Casey. I think it's Kid.Casey, KIDD dot Casey with a K. That I met out in the Grand Canyon. He was talking about on Instagram. I mean, you and I do Instagram,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
um, uh, he's the one with the cool bird, Nico, that's flying around everywhere.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so he was talking about what they do out there for Africanized bees, because there's a lot of them, and said if you catch a
Mm.
swarm, well, it's mostly swarm issues or maybe a removal out of somebody's house, but the Africanized bees are pretty prevalent. And he said they have what they call purgatory yards. And so we
Yeah.
take them out there because they may be very healthy, they may not be, but requeen them in that
Hmm.
spot, because you don't want to
Hmm.
bring that back home. And so
Right.
you've got a layer of you got another layer of abstraction that you have to put in for a quarantine, more or less.
Hmm.
And you also have doing the removals or just catching swarms out in the wild somewhere under a truck bed, whatever. Uh, you're a little bit in a more complex situation than me because you got to look at that bee and start analyzing its traits a little harder, than I
Hmm.
do because I picked stock and then I stayed with that stock, and so
Right.
it's just a little more complicated. But I mean,
Hmm.
it's cool. But
It is.
yeah.
It's yeah. All right. So those are our introductions. um, Talking about what we're seeing now here. Ugh, you're colder than me, so
Well, now the bees I have will work in the cold. If there's anything, they'll get out 43 Fahrenheit, so probably what
hmm
6, 7 Celsius. They'll get out and kind of fly around. And if there's chicken corn dust, if there's any kind of protein, they'll land on it. If there is a sugar resource, they'll find it and hit it
hmm
hard. But they're just kind of hanging out, until
hmm
other than a few warm days where they'll do some house cleaning. And I think of Monty Python, bring out your dead. They'll bring
hmm
Undertakers will
Yeah,
drag a few folks out that passed away a month ago and they weren't able to get them out. Um, that's just part of beekeeping. I'm sorry,
yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
uh,
It is.
but they're not all that busy on the outside right now. And like, it depends on what the weather does and whether I try and stimulate them. Mine are harder to stimulate into brood rearing, or laying eggs. And
Hmm.
so they're just kind of hanging out for about the month of January. And what are yours doing?
We've got some really warm days, and we've had some really warm days. So I'm seeing orientation flights and collecting the sugar syrup like crazy. And when I put it out, just clustered all on my feeders. I actually put out some, which I don't think of pollen too much. I mean, I don't think about pollen sub too much.
Mm,
And it's just something that I hadn't really paid attention to. But the further I go along, and the more I read and listen and learn, the more I do. But I found a small, they're like round little
mm.
whatever they're the small
Yeah, I
ones
saw.
and ultra big
Yeah,
and I put that out the other day. I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna put this out. I got some new. So anyway, they got rid of that in a couple hours.
yeah.
So I'm just seeing a lot of weird stuff. But it's not that weird for Tennessee since our temperatures are weird
No,
going up and down.
I've quoted you a lot on that because I was talking to Jack Lowry, of course, my old good friend of mine,
Mhm.
um, that sells all the bee supplies and got all the
Mhm.
non-fun zone rows
Yeah.
of hives
Oh gosh.
down around Manchester, and of course Langford and other people that are 30 miles away in one direction or the other, that trying to raise queens. And it didn't occur to me 2 or 3 years ago. I think it was year before last, 2022, when I was talking to you, and I said, I don't know, everybody's kind of having a hard time getting early queens. I said it's cold for a day or two, and then it's 75 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's like, I'm always trying to do the
Hmm.
Celsius in my head for international folks that
That's
weren't
nice.
burdened with learning Fahrenheit.
Oh yeah.
So I'm like, okay, that's about 23. But
That's good.
this is the way my brain works. But it's a really warm day, and then it freezes, and then it rains for 4 days. And you said, so,
Yeah.
having grown up in Florida, you said, isn't that Tennessee every year?
Yeah,
Of course, I
it
spent
is.
most of my life in Tennessee, grew up here. And I said, you are correct. It is. And so now that's my standard answer. If I'm talking to these old guys that's done it, 40 years
That's
or something,
funny.
and I'm like, welcome to Tennessee. And I tell them
Yeah,
that story. It's like, because it
yeah,
doesn't occur to us that we fight this battle
right,
every April.
right. Yeah, it's interesting to be somebody who, I'm from Florida. So to see the weather here in the winter, it's just it's interesting thing, especially when you have bees, you notice things a little bit more deeply. And so yeah, it's been cool to notice that.
Yeah, if you
Um,
don't do agriculture at all, then you're not really. I wasn't concerned about whether if
yeah,
it just is what it is. You go out and you do your
right.
thing. But with the
Hmm.
bees, it gave me a reason to want to know what the temp was and how that was
Yeah,
going and when spring was actually here. And
yeah, yeah. April 15th, last freeze. What is it? So normally what people say for around here is April 15th is like when you can plant after that.
I did a couple things. I noticed our first freeze here on the mountain was October 7 last, or in 22. It was October 8th this year. And I never knew. We were down in Belize, fortunate enough to take a trip down there, and the weather's always 75 to 95. It's beautiful. And then I'm thinking, okay, we got October, November, December, January, February, March, and sometimes April. And that's at least 6 months of freezing temperatures. I don't know if I want to live somewhere.
Uh, yeah.
And I did, and living here my whole life, I didn't know that. I didn't think about, wait a second, we're getting ice when I walk outside. 6 months out of the year, there's ice somewhere, at least some of the days of the month.
Yeah.
But I love it here. I mean, it's
Me too.
4 distinct seasons.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I mean that coming from Florida, I know that. Like I know there's seasons and I appreciate them a lot. It's just wetter than I thought.
Yeah.
But then we go through droughts. Anyway, that's a whole other thing.
I'll speak to the pollen stuff just for a second as succinctly as I can, and I quit doing unless it's very necessary, like ER emergency triage. I don't put it inside the hives because, as you know, I'm getting to where I don't put anything inside a hive that they don't carry in the front door. But one thing I do is I leave it out a lot of the winter, out in a feeder. And my thing is I'm going to be raising a bunch of bees in the spring, and I want the times that I've seen an issue, deformed wing virus or something else manifest, which is few, but it has always been accompanied by a protein shortage. And it's probably where I screwed up and pulled a frame that I should have left in place. I haven't seen it in about 3 years, but it was fixable with nutrition.
Right. Yeah.
And so I want them to have that protein to build babies with, and not be looking around for stuff, because our maple is really scant. And so it's a long time before they actually start hitting pollen in a big way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I just bought a big thing of pollen. I'm gonna put a bucket out and do like you, just kind of leave it out. Why not? And
well, you're playing with fire, they'll put small hive beetles love that to put larvae in.
Right.
And so it's such a battle to have to figure that out. Do they eat it? Do they make more royal jelly? Probably, yes. In fact, they do. But you're playing with fire that, it's just like, I just let them carry it in, and it's less work.
Yeah. I think that's why when I said I just don't really think about it is why, because of the hive beetle situation in this area, because we are like the ground here is prime real estate for hive beetles. So I just kind of said, I'm not putting it in my hives. And that's what I teach people too. I mean, you can, but you got to check on it, often.
That's it.
There's just a lot.
In a nutshell, that's it. If you're going to be in them every 3 days, then you'll be okay, because you can toss it but it's just like, and there's a certain fundamental philosophical thing about, okay, my mouse deficiency thing, and it's like, don't put a mouse. I'm looking for somebody to throw a mouse in the hive, a dead mouse, and say, well, it was gone in a week, so they must have a mouse deficiency. Just put something outside if you want. In my opinion, put something outside and see if they forage it before you go slapping it inside the hive, because there's a balance in there that you're screwing around with. And even if you do an inspection, after you leave, they're putting that balance back in order. They're like, oh, why again with this?
Right.
And so I find it just works better, and it's less work, and I think do better, when I'm not in them as much. And that's the reason I wanted 15, so I could really pester the crap out of 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah, right.
And the others wouldn't get the lid cracked in 2 weeks. These I'm opening every day, because I'm curious.
That's kind of what happens around here. Hold on, I got it. This guy, he's just bugging me down there. I don't know why. This is, of all my dogs, he's the one that hates being held.
Pups. Yeah, my pups just got out of bed.
Oh, so okay. Now we're going to talk about what to look for in the spring, and I don't know how much time we have left.
Go ahead, you take off, because I'll talk.
It feels like about half. Well, it's nice when you can have bees at your house, or in your yard, just because you can learn so much. And I think for me, just watching them, really closely. That's the most important thing for me when it comes to beekeeping is just keeping an eye on what they're doing. Um, I covered up. I've got a couple really strong colonies in my yard, and they're out when yours are out at 43 degrees. Mine are out at that temp too. Not all of them, but the majority of them, which is kind of cool to watch. But just I'm just watching what they're bringing in. I'm looking for that really white wax, that like beautiful new wax. And we talked about like, here's a piece of wax. This is not, I mean, you can tell like this is a little bit lighter, but this is not the white that we're talking about. This is like my finger white. That's the white we're talking about you're looking for in
Yeah,
the
and
spring.
even if you look across the top of the frames where maybe they're finishing out some that you thought was finished, you can see that, maybe pry a couple frames apart and see that why. What that means is that they've got enough bees, enough young bees usually, enough
Mhm.
temperature and enough resources
Mhm.
to start in building comb, which is their nature, to build these skyscrapers upside down in perfect symmetry. It's amazing, but
It is
so
amazing.
it really speaks to a larger, okay, I know they're okay, or I feel like they're
Right.
okay if they're putting comb everywhere,
Mhm. Yeah, they're
and
getting
so
what they
that's
need.
the reason it makes you excited. It's cool. It's way
Hmm.
cool. I'll always be amazed by it, but it's really that. It's a real quick way to. It's like smelling. We were talking about smelling. They smell like a bakery. They're doing okay.
Yeah. 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 And yeah, we should talk about just all using all the senses when it comes to
Mm,
beekeeping, because that's what I like to talk about when I teach. Um, because that's the
sure.
most important thing. And you and I probably agree on that.
Yeah, yeah. You can hear
Listening,
a lot.
watching. Hmm.
Smelling is I can pop a lid at this point after popping a lot of lids. And if there's something wrong, I could probably smell it.
Hmm.
And if there's something right and way right, if
Yeah.
it's just like, okay, I just opened a bakery and it's even sugary
Fresh.
smelling because it's got
Yeah.
the honey in there. It's like throw some cinnamon on that and make me a roll. And I don't even really have to, if I ever pop one open and smell that, I don't even have to inspect that eye. It's got
Yeah.
a queen, it's got babies, it's
Hmm.
got everything going right for it. They're in full royal jelly bee bread feeding mode. And you know, I know the health of the hive pretty much. And if I don't smell, and it's a certain time of year, like spring and early summer, say mid June,
Right.
that pretty well cuts off,
Yeah.
or else it gets so prevalent you don't notice it as much anymore. But yeah,
Right. Yeah,
um,
but that's also when you start smelling something's not right.
yeah, and then like queenless, I've heard Langford and a lot of other people say, that they roar when they're queenless. I've seen bees
Yeah.
that roar when they're queenless. I've seen bees that didn't. I've seen bees that kind of roar when even if you ease the lid off, they're like, "Mm," and
Yeah.
there's absolutely nothing wrong with them. So I don't go by that, but it will tell you a lot about whether you're going to get stung,
Yeah.
whether
No,
you need to be careful with your movements, and that kind of thing.
I do go by that sound, by that queen sound. There's just a
Most of the time,
there's
there
a
is.
louder, there's just a louder, you know, they just seem like restless. They
Mm,
seem
mm.
unhappy. And you
They know
don't,
something's not right.
yeah, and you've got to have experience before you can hear and understand those things. And that's really frustrating for new beekeepers because they're like, what am
Yeah.
I supposed to hear? What am I smelling? They don't know any of that. And people are like, on forums, like, oh, you don't need to go into your hive. You don't need to check them. Well, we might not need to because we know
Yeah,
what that
yeah, because I
smells
can
like.
smell the top of them. Yeah,
Right. But new beekeepers need to learn what's going on in there. So I think it makes sense for them to be in the colony more often if they
I
know
do
what
too.
they're doing.
I do too. And even you can learn more from mistakes than
True.
you
Yeah,
fall on your butt and you get up and
that's
you do
true.
it again and you may do something that really hinders them or hurts them.
Hmm.
Forgive yourself up front. Know that I got a good motive or whatever, and get out and have some fun. But yeah, when I first got back into it and had one hive, I was in it nearly every day. I wasn't tearing
Yeah.
it completely apart nearly every
Right,
day.
right. Yeah, same.
Um, you know,
Same. Yeah. And now I'm like, they're fine. Like,
yeah.
like the Russian bees that I love. Oh my gosh. I just walk over there. I'm like, they're fine. I don't even
Yeah,
need to go in there.
Yeah.
I just know.
I'm confident enough now with both the bees and the practices and just experience. So some of it is, it doesn't bother me at all to have a lid that hasn't been popped in 2 months.
Hmm.
Um, it's it's not always good. Sometimes I just don't have the time to do it, and there's
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I know.
But so I don't like that part when I would like to be in them, but I can't
I
because.
know.
But still, I set them up for success. Like it's like selling nukes.
Hmm.
You set them up as if somebody's going to throw them in a desert. And they're going to have a
Yeah,
hard. You
right.
don't know the environment they're getting set in. They need a lot of protein in there. They need a lot of. It's
Hmm.
got a well balanced nuke and a nuke that's not. I didn't know that the first year that I was selling some, and then after that, I got looking around. I'm like, no, this needs to go. You need this to survive and thrive for 2 or 3 months, even if this person knows nothing. And
Hmm.
hopefully that'll get them, going. And again, there's the interview process.
Yeah, because sometimes they don't know anything and
Yeah.
they got a hive for Christmas and they're like, oh, I'm gonna get bees, and they just go and get bees, and then they're like, wait, what am I doing?
Yeah. And I mean, that's everybody's going to start somewhere.
Yeah.
That's,
Um, so the 10-minute thingy just popped up.
yeah. So white wax is good. The
Hmm.
smell is good because that means they're brooding. Um,
Pollen,
and
obviously.
pollen, obviously, when they're bringing in pollen baskets. And
So what about nectar? That's something that I'm not 100% sure. I mean, when I look in the frames, obviously I can see, and I actually have a frame here that might have some nectar in it. I just was looking at it today. I was putting it up.
in
Um,
in in my very loose definition, a flower will open up and produce pollen first.
there you go. Check it out.
It
Tell me if you can see
oh
the
yeah.
glare. Can you see the glare? It's
Well,
like a
this is going to
little.
take some glasses.
So just for
Yeah,
people
yeah, yeah,
people that are watching, you see
yeah.
those.
Clear. Yeah,
Yeah, it's like a clear. Like, what is that? Is that honey?
it's going
No,
to
it's
be.
not. It's gonna be, but it's nectar. And aside from looking in the hive, is there a way to tell what they're bringing in nectar wise? Do you know if there's any?
Not unless you see them actually on the flowers. And
Yeah,
we talked about trees and how in Tennessee, if you're making honey, you're probably making honey off trees because it's just,
yeah,
there's the ground is one level, the trees are, and so it's multidimensional.
yeah.
Like,
And we can't see the
um,
top of the maples, like it, or the tulip poplars. We can't see that, but
you
they're
can
up
just,
there.
yeah, and you can tell a lot of traffic coming in with no pollen, coming and going, very determined
Mm-hmm.
looking. Then they're
Mm-hmm.
bringing nectar from something. And you may
Mm-hmm.
see it. I mean, we've let the whole place grow up with blackberries and liatris and sumac and whatever else. There's some a little bit of clover and just weeds. And so if there's a lot of traffic and there's no pollen, and like I said, they're determined looking.
They're on a
Well, I'm going to
mission.
work. They're on a mission.
Nectar.
Then they're
Yeah.
bringing it in, and then that's part of that smell too, as they start,
Mm-hmm.
um, evaporating the water off of it, and the enzymes start kicking in.
I've never tasted nectar before. And when I was in Florida a week ago, everything is still blooming. And I saw a bee going into, I wish I could remember the name of the plant. But the flowers it's kind of like a lily. It looks
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
complicated. But the
Yeah, that thing
bee,
you posted looked like a bromeliad or something, where it's just, I
yeah,
mean, it had to really
yeah, it was
take a
something
trip.
like that. And I was like watching the bees because there were honeybees on it. And it went inside, it kind of stuck its butt. Its butt was sticking out. And I thought, is there pollen in that? I didn't know. So when they
Mm-hmm.
left, I opened it up and it was wet. So I'm like, oh, it's nectar. I stuck my finger in there and
Right.
tasted it and it was sweet. I thought that's cool. I'd never done that before. I never really saw that before. So it's kind of interesting because when you see bees on plants, I think, well, at least I think, oh, they're getting pollen, just
Mm-hmm.
that's what we think about because we're always talking about pollination,
Right.
pollinating bees getting pollen. Like the pictures are of pollen.
Right.
So it was cool to realize, oh, that was
That they
nectar.
run on carbs,
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
we do.
Just like us. We like the sweet stuff.
Yeah.
They just don't gain weight and we do.
You mean a little bit like the bee movie? You're gonna work us to death? We'll sure try. It's
Bee
kind of their
movie.
their lot, but Yeah, and
Yeah.
you can shake a lot of times if in the spring, if I'm shaking some nurse bees off to put in a mating nuke or something like that in a nucleus colony. Um, I'll shake some nectar out, and I've seen people that do that testing their honey, basically, because the nectar
Yeah.
will shake out. Even I do it
Right.
accidentally, and
Right.
I can't say I've ever like just taken a
Yeah.
taste
Well,
of it, and
now you gotta do it.
I got to
Because
do it. I got to do
because
it.
because I'm asking myself, I know that's nectar that bee was getting, I'm like, I wonder what it tastes like. And my cousin Jay was with me and he was like, we're gonna die. I'm like, we're not gonna die. Come on, do it. And we both tasted it and we thought, that's cool. Yeah. It was
Okay,
neat to see that.
excellent,
Yeah,
excellent.
so
I
yeah,
guess that's a good start.
yeah, that's
We'll be walking through some of this stuff through the year. We've got a lot of exciting things,
mhm,
really, to both of us and our platforms
yeah.
coming up, and really exciting things. And
Yeah, we do. And I'm
we'll,
excited about the conference, the
yeah, yeah,
American Beekeeping Conference next. I leave on Tuesday.
yeah, that's gonna be
Um,
great.
that's a long conference, by the way. It's from Tuesday to Saturday.
Well, there you go.
That's long. I mean, most of the
Yeah,
time they're
that's
like 2 days.
well, that may be more intense learning than vending. And I don't mean that
Yeah.
in a bad way, but it's just like
Oh
I've
no,
been to several
100%.
conferences where it's just like, oh, that's what we're here for, is to cut a deal with a vendor on some stuff
Yeah.
and not have the shipping cost. Okay.
Yeah.
uh,
Right. No, I agree. And I was looking at the people that are coming and the talks that I'm going to, and I'm actually glad that I chose that one. Well, I got a grant
sure,
too
sure,
for it.
excellent.
But yeah, I'm
Thank
excited.
God.
I'm excited to report on that down the road. So,
Yep, cool.
okay,
Later, Gator.
happy beekeeping. All right.
All right,
See
see
ya.
you.